Alright, so if y'all remember back in June, I released my 100% completion video of the first Hollow Knight game, and that video did so well. Thank you all for the support on that, by the way. And after that video released like 2 months later, Hollow Knight Silksong's release date was announced. And let's just say, I was pretty hyped for it, so hyped in fact, that I proceeded to release 2 LEGO videos after it was announced, with one of them doing really well and the other doing god-awful. But now that Christmas has passed and the new year is already here, it's time to dive right into Silksong and see if it really lived up to the hype and got robbed of its game award this year. So I 100%ed Hollow Knight Silksong for the first time ever. That means I'll be freeing up all the fleas, collecting every crest, and finding a bunch more stuff in the game that would make this list about 5 minutes long if I had to read everything. As just like the last game, it was a whole lot more than I thought it was gonna be. But now let's get right into the game as the first cutscene plays out as we see Hornet getting kidnapped by a bunch of enemies that we'll encounter later on in the game, as this was the one thing that I truly enjoyed about this game very little of, and that was the cutscenes, because these things look so well made and just look outstanding. But once that was done, the first act of the game begins, known as Farloom, as Hornet face plants onto the ground and damn near gets stabbed by her own nail, because God knows if that happened, this game would end real quick. But once I press B to bind, I regain some of my health in a similar system to the first game, where this time around I gain 3 HP instead of 1 each time. But the first thing I do right away, just like I did in Hollow Knight 1, is check the wall up behind me, which paid off, as just like in the first game, there was a hidden area with one of the new currency in the game known as shell shards, which in reality isn't the real currency of the game, but we'll get into that a little later. But on top of finding that, there was a second hidden room in this already first hidden room, where I run into my first enemy in the game, which turns out to be some sort of mini boss, as it kills me in literally 2 shots. Like, what the fuck? And after going at it for about 4 attempts, I managed to get it on the 5th and receive a beast shard, which I don't use ever for the rest of the game. So yeah, that was useless. But after that, I move on up here to the left and make it to the first area of the game, known as the Moss Grotto, where I find my first set of normal enemies in the game, take damage like an idiot, and find a moss berry along the way, which I will also get into a little later. Yes, I know there's a lot I'll be getting to a little later. But before we get any further, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as it helps this video get pushed out to new viewers and helps me know that you're enjoying the content being produced here, because a lot of work gets put into these things. But now that the shameless promos out of the way, once I move forward into the next screen of the game, Hornet gets hit with a wave of period cramps, I find a frayed rosary string, and then die like an absolute dumbass because I can't platform to save my life. Like, what the hell was that? And after recovering from that, I explore a little more, where I managed to find another mossberry, as well as a hidden passage filled with enemies, and a hatch that was filled with those rosary things that I found earlier in stringed form. As unlike the shell shards from earlier, rosaries are the actual currency in this game that will be used to purchase items from merchants and such, whereas the shell shards will be used for other uses later, which I'll cover when we get there. And after taking a huge leap of faith all the way back down to where I started the game like an idiot, I make the run back all the way to where I was and watch Hornet experiences more of her unfortunate period cramps before finding the first bench in the game, where I rest and heal up all the damage I took on the way back here, right before I take a lot more damage as I waltz my way straight into the first boss fight of the game, known as the Moss Mother, which I can't lie was super easy as I beat her on the first try, but also really freaking annoying, because for whatever reason I could never time her swoop across the screen, as if I was incapable of jumping or something. And after defeating her, I gain access to this upper area with this vine and ascend straight into, guess what, some more period cramps. Like, do you need a Tylenol or something, Hornet? Because at this point I'm getting pretty concerned. Oh, I guess not, she just passed out on the ground. Well, I guess the game's over, guys. The main character has just died. Oh wait, false alive, she's actually alive, never mind. And after speaking to the chapel maid, she gives us our first and main objective in the game, which is to reach the Great Citadel at Kingdom's Peak, wherever that is. And after talking to her some more and passing by some of the bastards that kidnapped me at the start of the game, I reached the primary hub in the game known as Bone Bottom. And for those of you that have played the first Hollow Knight game, Bone Bottom is pretty much what Dirtmouth was in that game, only that it has nothing to do with accessing the final boss whatsoever. And after talking with pretty much all the NPCs around the area, as well as finding the first merchant, I run into probably my favorite character in this entire game, named Sherma, because he literally just appears everywhere in this game and sings this song infinitely to try and open this massive door. I absolutely love him, he's so cute. And after a little more exploration and finding some more hidden rosaries, I get into my first challenge section, where I get hit with multiple waves of enemies until I defeat them all. And this section, being the first of many in this game, was obviously really easy, but trust me, it gets way worse later on, you'll see. And after taking care of that, the ground opens up and leads me to the other side of the door Sherma was trying to open, as I hit this lever to lift it and reach the next bench in the game, where I'm scammed out of 30 rosaries in order to use it. I guess even though though it's a new game, the same scam gets carried over, huh? And once I'm done resting up, I keep moving forward, which brings me to the next area in the game known as the Marrow, which just looks so cool, and is also where I find Flea Master Mushka, who tells me that there are many fleas scattered around the place hiding because of the dangerous times and asks me to help find them, which I promised my first witch in the game to help him with this. And just before I move any further, for those of you who haven't played the first game, these fleas are pretty much like the grubs from Hollow Knight 1, where we have to find them all scattered around the world until we find them all. And after speaking to the fleas, I explore more of the Marrow, where I find my first tool as well, known as the Shard Pendant, which I can equip at any bench and gain its powers, and also run into Chakra, who will be my friend in this game since she's going to be the one to sell us all the maps for every area, so I can actually see where the hell I'm going. As well as two more important items, which are the Quill and Compass, since the Quill updates the map every time I sit at a bench, and the Compass shows me where my character is on the map when I open it. In my opinion, probably the most important items in the game, I can't lie. For me anyway. But after that, I'm led back into the Moss home, where I make my way through some easy enemies that for whatever reason were hard for me to get through, and find my first silk skill known as the Silk Spear by binding myself with this thing. But now that I have the Silk Spear, I can now use the ability to destroy these silk webs by throwing my spear through them, as well as using it as a long range attack on enemies, which is pretty useful. And after getting that ability, I managed to find another moss berry in this room, and then I find the moss druid hiding away in this little area where I promised to wish in bringing them fruits of the world. And after accepting the wish, I instantly hand over the 3 moss berries in my inventory, which I both grant the wish and gain the druid's eye as a reward. But even though the wish was granted, I will be still returning back to the moss druid several times throughout the game, as I can still give over moss berries that I find over to them and get rosaries in return, which is a really great investment, so I'm going to be keeping my eyes peeled for them from now on. But now that I have the druid's eye, it acts as a tool that I can now equip, as it pretty much just gives me silk to heal anytime I take damage, so it's pretty useful. And after that, I managed to find my first spool fragment right over here, which when I get 2 of them increases the length of my silk meter. Damn, I forgot how much shit there is to explain and collect. But now I head back to the Marrow, where I get into a fight with the Bell Beast, and this fight isn't too hard as she does the same moves every time, and I died, of course I spoke too soon. But all jokes aside, the fight really wasn't that bad, as the patterns were really easy to pick up on, with the falling balls being the hardest thing to dodge in this fight, as some of them are actually just random as hell. But after 3 tries, I managed to defeat the Bell Beast and collect this floating orb before I honestly don't even know what the fuck's happening right now, as I'm then transported into this fever dream and collect another floating orb, which turned out to be a silk heart, which gives me the power to regenerate 1 silk once I use all of it, which I can't even lie, I completely forgot about while writing the script and rewatching this video. And after collecting that, the Bell Beast for whatever reason just wants to be my friend all of a sudden and be fast travel mechanic in this game, just like the stag stations in the original, but in this game they're called Bellways. As I now head back to Bone Bottom and grant 1 wish on the board by donating shell shards and promise another. And I'm gonna say this right now, I will not be covering every single wish that I promise and grant in this game, as there are way too many to go over, and there are a lot of them that are just not worth mentioning at all, like the donation one I just completed, for example. So there's that. I head back to the Marrow using the Bellway station after getting through a somewhat difficult platforming section, do some exploring before fighting and dying multiple times to whatever the hell this mini boss is, because what the hell is the range on that swing, seriously. But after I defeat him, I move on to the right and reach the next area in the game known as the Hunter's March, before exiting immediately and heading back to the Marrow, because God knows there's a lot more to explore here than what I've seen so far. But when I go back, I run into Grindel, who becomes a merchant for me once I give him a bunch of rosaries, and then find myself running into another new area in the game known as the Deep Docks, before once again running back to the Marrow straight away because of my new fear of new areas. But of course, in order to proceed through the game, I have to face my fears and explore the area. So I rest up and move on forward back to the Deep Docks, where I instantly get scammed out of 30 rosaries again for a darn bench, find Chakra, where I purchase the map of the area so I know where I'm going, and open up the Bellway as well, because why not? But on top of opening the Bellway station, I find a hidden passage right here in the wall of the fast travel area, which brings me to a relatively simple platforming area, where at the end I rescue another flea. And after dealing with that, I do some more exploring, fighting, and of course taking damage like an idiot, before finding another one of these binding things where I gain the ability Swift Step, also known as the run and dash ability, which I can't lie is probably the best ability in the game and one of the most convenient mechanics as well, as the only fast move mechanic in the first game was just the dash, and that was good but not mobile enough to get places quicker. But being able to both dash and run at the same time was really nice to have, and being able to leap as well was just an amazing addition. I loved it. But now that I've glazed this shit into oblivion, I find the next flea right away by literally moving to the left and platforming up here to find it, and after that I do a little more fighting in the gauntlets before finding the Forged Daughter, who will become a very important NPC later on in the game, but she's also a merchant as sells us a really helpful tool called the Magma Bell. Whenever I take any fire damage, it'll only deal 1 hit to me instead of the 2 it already does without it equipped. And after that I find a second spool fragment to combine it with my first to increase the amount of silk I can hold, before dying like an absolute imbecile and running into to Silksong's version of Hornet known as Lace, as we encounter her multiple times in the game, just like we do in Hornet in the first, as this leads into a full-blown boss fight over a pit of lava. And overall, this fight wasn't too bad to deal with, as the patterns weren't too bad to follow, as I managed to get a hang of it pretty quickly, beating it after only 3 attempts, which I'll take as she jumps away as soon as she's beaten. A real crash out if you ask me, worse than Hornet in the first game if I'm being honest. But after taking care of that and unlocking the next bench, I head back to Bone Bottom, where I spent a little too much time trying to get this mossberry and exploring some of the places that I wouldn't be able to get without the dash, including getting into a fight with probably the most unfun boss in the entire game. And it's so unfun, the game literally doesn't even identify it as so shit. But the basic premise of it is that the boss hovers over me the entire time and spews out poison from its mouth, and it's my job to hit it in times where it's not spewing poison and hide when it starts. And from what you're seeing in front of you, you can probably tell it was annoying as hell. Well, you're right, it was fucking annoying. But after spending damn near 20 minutes on this fight, I finally managed to beat it and retrieved my first mass shard in the game. And as you guys probably know from the first game, once I collect 4 mass shards, I gain 1 hit point to my overall stats, which is going to be very useful later on, as it's very important to 100% in the game. And after having to deal with that AIDS for about half an hour, I head back to the deep dock, where I managed to find another new area in the game known as the Far Fields. And I know you're asking, what happened to some of the previous areas that I found and never explored? Hunter's March? Well, you could call it prolonging the inevitable, but I like to call it preparing myself for the challenge ahead. So yeah, I'll go with that. But by no means am I calling Far Fields a walk in the park either, because this place probably has one of the hardest enemies in the game when it comes to early game areas. Because after fighting these 2 guys at once showed me that I'm about to get into some shit. Because when regular enemies start feeling like mini boss fights, I know I'm in for it. But after finding Chakra right away and buying the map from her, I unlock the Bellway, find another fleet, and then grant the seamstress's wish, which allows me to gain the Drifter's Cloak, which now allows me to guide through the air like Peach does in Mario 3D World, which is also useful. On top of that, I'm able to ride up these big gusts of wind to get to higher areas that I wasn't able to reach before, which is just so nice. But after that, I explore around a little more, finding a second mass shard in a pretty cool puzzle section, and then waltz into the next real boss fight of the game, being the 4th chorus. And this boss is probably my personal favorite boss in this entire game, purely because of its design, because the animation is just so smooth and it's just incorporated so beautifully into the background while attacking the foreground at the same time. It's just such a cool design. But even though I love the overall design of the boss, I absolutely hate that this fight wasn't a little harder than it was, because I literally beat this fight on the very first try, since the patterns were pretty much the same the entire fight, just faster as it went on. I just wish there were multiple phases for this fight, because this design looks way too cool for such a mid fight. But now that I've raised this boss to the absolute max, I beat the 4th course on the first try and continued through the Far Fields as I ride up these gusts of wind, dying of course in the way there because I'm ass, and mistakenly make it to the next major area in the game known as Greymore. And I say mistakenly because making it to this area too early on completely screws me over when attempting one of the gauntlet fights later on, but I'll get to that when I come across it. But for now, I leave Far Fields and head straight back to hell itself, the Hunter's March. And I think from the gameplay you're seeing on screen right now, you can probably guess why I call it hell. And if you haven't guessed yet, it's because it's permanent parkour. Like literally, I don't think there was a single traversal section in the Hunter's March where I wasn't doing parkour. Like it was actually insane. And especially with this weird ass diagonal downward attack that I really never got used to throughout the entire time playing the game. I just straight up sucked at it. Also, the enemies in this area are just overall super tough, especially the guys that wear the mask and use a bone sword. Like this guy was jumping and dashing and shit, like calm down buddy. But now I reach one of the most unfair gauntlet sections in this entire game. And I don't call it unfair because of how hard it is, because it's hard for a reason, but purely because of the circumstances behind what happened to me when I played through it. Let me explain. So usually when you explore the Hunter's March, you'd get through everything exactly how I did it, where you'd spend about 30 seconds finding these guys, and then out of nowhere, Chakra would appear and help you get through the section because of how difficult it is. But me being the amazing explorer that I am, I explored a little too far into the game, as I mentioned before, and managed to get into the Greymore. And me finding that area pretty much stopped Chakra from appearing in this fight to help me for whatever reason, as she pretty much leaves me to suffer all alone as I fight these bastard bugs by myself. And honestly, it wasn't even that bad on my first try, as I actually almost beat it. But after I died the first time and then ended up dying like an absolute idiot on my run back, losing all the rosaries I had collected up to that point, I was so pissed off. Like, I'll take fights in this game being difficult because that's the way the developers wanted them to be, but when the run back to the boss room is a whole ass parkour section with flying fuckers everywhere, that's where we have a problem. As in this game as a whole, every time I truly lost my shit is when I died before I could recollect my things, because that means all the time I spent collecting all those rosaries were just a waste of time and just overall sucks. But once that happened, I was just not in the right state of mind and just tried rushing and started making dumb mistakes, which led me dying for the next 30 minutes until I finally beat it and put this shit to rest for good. Later on, there'll be other gauntlets where Chakra actually helps me, and you'll see how much easier it is once I have her there. But this definitely was one of the hardest early game sections I think I've ever encountered in this game thus far, with the hardest coming up in a bit. But after dealing with that, I die straight away because I'm fucking shit, before resting up and finding another merchant who sells me a tool that I will be using throughout the entirety of this game, known as the Fractured Mask, which for those of you that don't know, acts as an extra life tool once I get down to 1 HP. And once I purchased it, I went back to the bench and equipped it right away, before finding Chakra of all people, because why the hell is she sitting on her ass here when she could have been helping me fight the gauntlet back there, which is actually what confused me the most about it. Because if me entering the Greymoor early was the reason why she didn't help me, then she shouldn't be sitting here selling me the map of the area. I'm sorry, I just really don't know what the hell's going on anymore, because this literally makes no sense. But after buying the map from Chakra, I collect a memory locket and enter the Chapel of the Beast, where I get into my opinion the hardest boss fight in this entire game, and that's the Savage Beastfly after I just got done raging at Chakra for not helping me before. But now I get to a fight where she can't help me at all, and now I know you all are looking at me like some absolute idiot and is saying, how can this boss even be hard, since it's literally the same exact moveset the entire fight, as he doesn't even get faster the more you get through it. Well, that's kind of what's hard about it, because for me, the fact that it was the same shit every time was really what made it challenging, especially since he literally just starts spawning in a bunch of other enemies while dashing across the screen and shit, which of course made it 10 times harder to dodge his attacks, because while you're already busy dodging the spiky fucker on the ground, oh there he is, dashing straight into your face as you lose 2 HP in one hit just like that. But sometimes he just dashes in the perfect spot where it's literally undodgeable. No matter if I jump or not, I'm getting hit either way. But I think the most bullshit thing out of the entire fight was the fact that the developers had the nerve to have this guy be spawned in during the fight, because not only is he the biggest enemy to spawn in the fight, and not only is he the hardest enemy to kill, but he also makes it the hardest to dodge the Beastfly's attacks with the way he actually attacks, which is just swinging blades around his head, which was just so annoying. But thank God there was a workaround for this enemy and really all the enemies he spawned in, and that's the fact that there was a friendly fire mechanic in this boss fight, as every time the Beastfly slammed down onto the ground, and if one of the enemies he spawned was caught in the crossfire, it would automatically be killed, making it easier for the time being, until of course they decided to be spawned in again. And if I would be honest, if that wasn't a mechanic in the fight, it definitely would have been 100 times harder, because trying to get rid of those spinning blade guys without just baiting the Beastfly to smash him into oblivion would have been absolute hell for me to get through. So I'm glad they implemented that tactic into this fight. And after going through 30 minutes of absolute torture fighting this fucker, I finally managed to beat him and put his ass to rest, as I never have to fight him again. Finally move on with the game, because my god that was hard for absolutely no reason. But after defeating that absolute pain in my side, I bind with this wooden statue over here and claim the second crest in the game, known as the Crest of Beast, which for those of you that don't know about crests, they give me a different variety of attacks, like basic attacks, downward attacks, along with different slots for different memory lockets for tools. But after using the Beast crest for like 30 seconds, I headed straight back to the bench and swapped that shit back out for my 100th crest, because I was not feeling the downward attack whatsoever, because what the heck is that? But now it's time to head back to the far fields and finally enter the next major section in the game, and actually on time this time, and that's Greymoor. As the first thing I do is find Chakra of course and buy the map right away, because this section is absolutely massive, and then get into a gauntlet section that I do end up dying in a few times before managing to defeat it and hit this lever, which spawns in a bunch of these bouncy balls that can strike and leap higher into the air, which of course is going to be super difficult with this diagonal attack bullshit. And not only that, but I have to deal with all these enemies surrounding the area that are, by the way, not easy to kill whatsoever. Because look at this shit, I'm getting mauled, and after trying to speedrun the bouncy parkour and failing multiple times over and not wanting to die, I run back the way I came, because I did not want to die in the middle of all of that, let alone somewhere far up in the parkour section. Instead, I'd rather die like a moron right here. Yeah, that feels so much better. But once I log off the game for a bit and hop back on with a clear mind, I make it all the way up and through this other spike parkour section with the same bouncy balls to find one of these things again and bind to them in order to gain another skill called Threadstorm, which is pretty useful in taking out these flying fuckers, I can't lie. But right after that, I end up finding the next bench and then swap that shit out right away, which is a lot more useful to me in my opinion. And after that, I get to the halfway home, which will be a spot that I frequent specifically for this bench's respawn point, and then meet Nu, who I promised a wish and then receive the Hunter's Journal from, which is just like the first game, as it just tracks every enemy that I come across, which I then find and open the next Bellway station, as well as finding Garmon and Zaza, who we'll be seeing a little later through this game, after getting through a few of these scissor snipping guys in the process, and then running into once again like 5 minutes later once I enter the gauntlet section against these guys on 1 HP, which is crazy by the way, but I do manage to beat the section without dying anyway, so that's a dub. Before binding with another object, which I have no idea how these things are even being chosen, and claiming the Reaper Crest, which actually has a normal downwards attack for once. But look at that, isn't it beautiful? I was having Hollow Knight 1 flashbacks all over again after seeing that, because that meant no more diagonal bullshit on the parkour parkour sections, which was amazing. But all the euphoria comes to an end as I then enter the next boss fight in the game, known as the Morwing, who I managed to defeat with the help of Garmon and Zaza after requesting their aid in battle. But even though they showed up to help me in the fight, it didn't actually make it any easier, because yeah, it's now a 2v1, but half the time Garmon isn't even attacking it, since the only times he's ever getting hits off is when I stun him and he's actually on the ground. And also, he almost never takes the boss off me, so it's as if he's not even there to fight to begin with. I guess it's more moral support than anything. But after defeating the Morwing and talking to Garmon as if he did something, I head up forward into a disturbing ass cutscene, because what the actual hell is going on, and enter into Haunted Bellheart, the next major area in the game. With the first thing I do is open the next bellway and talk to the Bell Hermit, who will be a very important character much later in the game. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. And after that, I head back to the Flea Master, since I've been finding all these fleas the entire time I've been playing, and grant his wish and take a trip with the gang in their cabin as they take me back to Greymoor, and I acquired the Flea Brew, which is another tool added to the collection, which by the way is right next to Bellheart. I just run straight to the left and come back to where I started, so that was fun. But what's even more fun is finding the next area in like 10 seconds after that, as I once again just run to the left and enter Shellwood, where I find the long pin after destroying this purple hive, and then get into another gauntlet section where I damn near die several times before beating it and getting scammed out of another 40 rosaries just to spawn in a bench, which I open this massive door just to not enter it and go the complete opposite direction, where I find Chakra and purchase both the Shellwood and the Bellheart maps from her, and then become a parkour master and find a Polypart, which we'll get into a little later, because right now it's time to fight the next boss fight in the game, known as the Sister Splinter, which I can't lie was pretty easy as I beat it on the first try. They don't call me the pattern recognition king for nothing. I can't lie, I gave myself the name, but you know what I mean. It was the same thing the entire fight. It wasn't that hard. But after beating her, I find another Polypart and then bind with another one of these things again and get the next ability in the game, known as the Cling Grip, which is a very useful ability as I can now climb walls and do wall jumps and all kind of stuff, which I was so waiting for. And after exploring around a little bit and going through these bell ducts, I don't even know what you would even call this area, I find the Grey Root and I instantly grant her a wish by giving her all 6 Polyparts I found on the way here, as she gives me the Polyp Pouch as a reward, which is also a very useful tool that I'll show off a little later once we get another tool later in the game. But after that, I find the next bellway station and open that up, and then after exploring some more, I managed to get into another boss fight in Shellwood, this one being honestly one of the hardest fights I've gotten to yet, and that's the Widow, mainly because this was the first fight I had encountered so far that was 2 phases and also the fastest, because her movement was so quick it was insane. Also, on top of having to deal with her quickness, it was also just a bunch of projectile dodging the entire time, and usually I'm good with that in games like this since I'm pretty good at Cuphead, but this fight was just a lot harder than it should have been since I was just getting hit by a lot of things that I shouldn't have and I just wasn't ready for. But after about 2 or 3 tries, I did manage to get her patterns down pretty well, with my projectile dodging not getting any better at all, but I did manage to beat her and then get into this binding sequence where I bind with her and then gain the ability Needle In, where I'm now able to play my needle, and now realize why this game is called Silksong, and it only took 7 hours to find out. Amazing. But not only am I able to play music, I can now play music to open doors like right here when I get back into this gray dream section that I still don't know what the hell it is, and get to the top where I grab this thing on the floor, which transitions me into a cutscene that I once again don't understand. Like, for those of you out there who actually understand what's going on and know the lore, please drop a comment explaining what's happening, because I have no idea. But once I exit the dream state, I spawn in the next bench and go down this elevator and get into Bellheart, which is no longer haunted as everyone is now back alive and everything is up and running as it should be. Again, I don't know why. Please someone explain. And after talking to this jolly old fellow, I go around to all the houses to see what everyone's up to as I visit the Pin Master, who sharpens my needle, increasing the damage my weapon does to enemies. But moving forward, I will need pale oil for him to sharpen it further, so I'll definitely be back multiple times to get my blade sharpened further into the game. And after that, I visit the Relic Seeker Scrounge, who literally just collects relics I bring to him and gives me rosaries in return, which is a fair trade, I can't lie. I then head back into Shellwood, where I once again get scammed out of some rosaries to unlock a bench, and then head into a completely other section called the Wormways, because why not have 20 different sections all next to each other, right? But just like all sections, I find Chakra to buy the map and then free another flea, which I haven't been mentioning at all throughout this video, but I promise you they all have been getting saved, don't you worry. But after that, I managed to make my way back to the Moss Grotto, because somehow they're all just connected like that, and enter the Chapel of the Wanderer, where I fight through a really easy gauntlet and claim my favorite crest in this entire game, and the crest I'll be using exclusively for the rest of this playthrough, and that's called the Wanderer's Crest. And oh my god, the moment that thing equipped and I was able to attack, all the feelings from the original Hollow Knight just came rushing back to me as I was literally in my chair feeling like I was playing the original again, since this crest literally just gives you the ability to attack like the original knight in the first game, since the crest is named after him after all. But since I didn't understand what the memory lock is at the time and didn't know that I could unlock slots on the crests, I just reverted back to the Reaper crest, since it was pretty much the same crest, just slower in attack. But now that I have my needle in, I use it to open this door and enter the Weave Nest Atla, where I find the map of the area along with Eva, who upgrades my crest and gives me another yellow slot to add on to them as well. And after doing some parkour and collecting another mass shard, I explore some more and get into a fight with another Moss Mother, this time double the trouble, as I now have to fight two at once, which I can't lie was harder than the original fight at the beginning of the game, but it wasn't that bad as I beat them on the second try and attained the Weave Light as well. And once that's done, I instantly humble myself by dying to one of these big rolling fuckers and head out back to the Moss Grotto, where I fast travel back to Bone Bottom and accept the wish to defeat the Sculpt Tyrant, who I fight straight away, who was actually pretty hard to fight with the Reaper's Crest. So I switched back to the Wanderer's Crest once I died, which didn't make the fight any easier, but it did increase my DPS by a lot since my attacks were much faster and I was able to gain Silk faster as well because of that. So I was healing more often as well. And after taking him out and granting the wish, I find the strange room where I speak to Lottie, who is pretty much a carnival booth guy with a little aiming game that I can play for a prize. And since I ain't no pussy and I'm confident in my skills, I pay up the 25 rosaries and get to the game, which is a target practice game, as I just have to hit the target 15 times with the straight pins to win. And I can't lie, this did take a little longer than I thought it was going to take to beat, but I did and expanded my tool pouch as a reward. But of course that wasn't all, because when I spoke to him again, he had another challenge in store, as this time instead of hitting the target only 15 times, I had to hit the target 25 times, and holy shit did this take time. This took so long, I was worried I was actually going to run out of rosaries by the time I beat it. But in the end, it only took me around 10 minutes to beat, but that also meant I lost around 400 rosaries in the process, which absolutely sucked, but at least I got a heavy rosary necklace as a reward, right? Yeah, 220 rosaries are not worth losing 400 rosaries, including 10 minutes of my life for, but I guess it was fun, right? And after that, I do a bunch of side shit for about an hour or so, with the only relatively important thing being getting the Plasmium file from this guy, which pretty much gives me extra hit points when I use it, kind of like the honeycomb health in the first game, but it doesn't grow back. But now I head back to the deep docks where I get kidnapped by this guy and get trapped in a hanging cage and sent to the slab, where Hornet is stripped of her cloak and nail, and now I have to navigate with absolutely nothing. I do however manage to find the map and make my way to the fuckers that kidnapped me and jump down and kill the one cosplaying as me, cause fuck that guy. And after that I get into a pretty tough gauntlet section that ended up killing me once before defeating it on my second try. And after exploring a bit, I find the next Bellway station and reach Mount Faye before turning right around and heading back to Greymoor, where I find a locked bell home and construct a Pimpolo, another tool to add to my collection. And after that I head back to Shellwood, where I run all the way left up here and get scanned by another bench again because I never seem to learn my lesson, and make it to the next major area in the game known as Blasted Steps. And by the way, versus the first game, there are just so many more areas to explore, like what the hell, I just saw 2 new areas 2 seconds ago and now I'm exploring a third. It's actually insane. But once I get here, I parkour up these rocks and fight some new and old enemies, as well as finding chakra to buy the map as always, and opening the Bellway station, as well as getting scammed by a bench again, before getting into the next boss fight of the game known as the Great Conch Flies, which was honestly a much more stressful fight than I thought it was going to be, even though the attacks were pretty basic, with them just moving through the walls and the ground and giving away their position based on the dust before them emerging. But I did beat them on the first try, as I killed one of the Conch Fly brothers before the other cries out in agony and runs away, signifying that we will be running into him again soon. And after that I parkour up here and train with the Pinstress and learn the Needle Strike, which I literally never used a single time in this entire game, but it's cool to have, I guess. Shortly after though, I managed to run into Sherma right here near the bench, as he tells me that he was looking for a place to rest, even after acknowledging that he knew this place was dangerous. So I don't even know why or how the hell he even got here in the first place, after me damn near dying 100 times trying to get here myself. And after playing some illegal dice with this guy and getting insanely lucky and winning so quickly, I get the Magnetite dice, which is a really useful tool that has a chance to block a hit from an enemy, which comes in clutch at the greatest times. And once I finally realized how the memory lockets work and I unlock the rest of the slots on the crest, I get fully equipped before climbing all the way up to the final door of the Citadel, where I play a song on my needle in, which activates the bells on the door, but also brings alive a figure in the background who reveals herself as the last judge, the last major boss that we need to fight before we enter the Citadel. And if y'all saw, I was on 1 HP before I got here, so the moment she jumps into the foreground and starts to fight, I get killed instantly as she takes out the other 2 pilgrims there as well, because why the hell not? But overall, this boss fight against the last judge was honestly one of my favorites out of the entire game, because not only did the physical design of the last judge look amazing, but her moveset was great too, as I loved her lasso and the fact that in the second and third phases, her moves revolve around flames and dodging them are a real challenge at the start, but the more you attempt to fight, the more you learn the pattern in order to dodge them. Also, the multiple waves of fire that appears across the screen once you enter the third phase is honestly my favorite move in the entire fight. It's just really cool and a nice dodging section as well. But of course, I think my favorite part of all is once you defeat the boss, she actually ends up exploding on the screen and deals 3 damage to you, and if you do end up dying to that, you're actually forced to reset and fight her again, which I find so funny. Thank Thankfully, I was a full HP when I fell for that, so I was good, but I definitely would have gotten so pissed if I died. But the fight overall wasn't the hardest, as it didn't take too long for me to beat, around 20 minutes or so, but the run back to the fight was so stupid. I absolutely hated it, since I was almost never at full HP once I reached the boss arena. But in the end, I did manage to beat her, and when she exploded, a cutscene starts to play as the door to the Citadel opens up, as we finally get a glimpse of the building and see how extravagant the thing actually is, because what the hell? Initiating the end of Act 1 and the start of Act 2, the Citadel of Song. As once I enter, I get the grand gate map right away before destroying this elevator and go crashing down further into the building, where I'm somehow alive at 1 HP and instantly get scammed once again, like I'm literally in an ancient fucking building. How is this even possible? And I'm still getting scammed out of 50 rosaries. And who the hell is this money even going to anyways? I have so many questions. But now that I'm all rested up, I head to the right and reach the Underworks, where I find the map right here and then find Loam after exploring for a bit, who seems like he's the sole power generator of the Citadel by just running on this treadmill that I didn't run on as well to increase this meter to maximum capacity, that ends up just giving me 1 rosary in return, which was pretty funny. But I then say goodbye to my newfound friend and explore some more until I find and open the first Ventrica in the game in the Underworks, which is literally just a fast travel mechanic specifically made for the Citadel, since as you saw in the cutscene before I entered the area, this place is absolutely massive, so this was a great integration. And after that, I get into a little gauntlet section, which was a little difficult but doable in the end, where I get another spool fragment and climb all the way to the top, where I get to the next area in the Citadel known as the Coral Chambers, which honestly has one of my favorite soundtracks in this entire game. It's just so beautiful, along with visuals, because the design is also just so amazing. And once I find a second spool fragment to increase my silk meter, I get into real explorer mode, because I knew there was going to be a lot to find in this place, because just look at the size of this place on the map. It takes up the most space out of all the other areas I've already been to. But nevertheless, I find the map of the Coral Chambers by paying a measly 70 rosaries out of pocket, since for some reason Chakra doesn't have any access to this area even though I open the door. And then run into Lace again as she mocks us in our face and jumps away, and I guess lets out a massive roar. I really don't know what's going on. That stuns me in my tracks and spawns in a few enemies to fight, where I then explore a little more around the area and find the next Bellway, as well as unlock the next Ventrica in the Citadel, as well as one of the most important areas in the game known as the first shrine, when I unlock this bench by ringing the bell, and I speak to the caretaker before finding another Ventrica and actually using it this time to go down to the Grand Bellway and exploring through the ducts, where I managed to run into Sherma again, and this time just chilling in the sauna, and he just looks so cute. Oh my god, just look at him, what a cool guy. And after that, I fight through another gauntlet that then lets me open up another Ventrica and find Garmon somehow here in the Coral Chambers, just picking fights with these random ass enemies, because why not? Man's a warrior apparently. I then ring some bells in order to receive the Cogheart piece, and then find the loyal Merguin, whose wish is pretty much just bringing him ingredients from different parts of Farloom in order for him to make a meal for his master. This quest is a pretty grindy one, but will be completed by the end of the game, and is pretty funny, I'll say. But after talking to him, I head back to the first shrine by using the Ventrica, in which is now called the Songclave, as now ever since I rung the bell to open the bench, a bunch of pilgrims have showed up in this area as a way of staying somewhere safe, as the area as a whole is very dangerous. And after completing a few wishes in Grand Bellway, head back to the first shrine and find that Sherma somehow made his way back here as well, which is starting to seem very weird because he doesn't seem to have a single scratch on him versus me, who died a million times already. But after catching up a bit and purchasing some more tools, I head back to Bellheart to accept some more wishes, where I promised the one wish that I don't think I can complete, and that's the Savage Beastfly. And oh my god, when I saw that name, I nearly went insane, because I did not want to encounter that thing again. But before I even do that, I head back to Bone Bottom to fight the Skull Tyrant again, that apparently is alive still and attacks the fuck out of Bone Bottom, and it destroys the bench as well and scares the shit out of everyone before I defeat it again just like last time. And it's actually a lot easier this time than when I fought it before, probably because of the DPS of the Wanderer's Crest, which again I will say is absolutely amazing. And after dealing with that, it is now time to deal with my sleep paralysis demon back in Farfield, as I enter the arena and come face to face once again with the bastard himself, known as the Savage Beastfly, at this time with lava everywhere, and guess what? Destroyable platforms as well. Yeah, this is gonna be a nightmare, because after he starts stomping down on the platforms and destroying them, I ended up dying like 2 seconds later, and not only does he destroy the ground blocking me from the lava, which is already annoying enough, but he also spawns in probably the most annoying enemies of all time for a boss like this, and that's these small fuckers who spit out fire towards me with the accuracy of Steph Curry. Because how is that shit hitting me every time? Like, I would have been fine if he spawned in the same enemies he did in the original fight, but this is just way too much, because what the hell is this? But pretty much it's the exact same fight as the original, except for these unfortunate added factors that made this fight 10 times harder, to the point that it actually took me a whole hour to beat him. Like, the longest so far a boss has taken me to beat is around 30 minutes, but this fight taking me an hour just solidifies how stupid this boss is, and in my opinion, the hardest boss in the entire game. I don't care if you disagree with me or if you beat it on the first try, I am saying that this boss is the hardest boss in the game, period. And if I ever replay this this game, I'm never accepting that quest again. But now that I'm calm again and finally beat the bastard, I head back to Bellheart to claim my reward for putting that fucker 6 feet under, and then head back to Grand Bellway where I use the white key I found when I first got to the first shrine and unlock this elevator that takes me down further into the Citadel as I reach a new area known as the White Ward, where I find a Coral Commandment sitting right here, and then fight one of these enemies who are probably the most annoying enemies to face in the Citadel by far, and then purchase the White Ward map as well. And after that I fight, die, and get revenge to this guy, because why the hell is he so difficult to fight? Along with his brother over here who I kill much easier than the first, and then drop down here where I find the 4th chorus just chilling down here completely powered down, which was kinda creepy when I first saw this, but for running through a bunch of suicide bombers, damn near losing my life to save another flea, they better be grateful by the way. And after losing my life multiple times just for some damn craft metal, I parkour across this lava and get into another binding sequence where I now learn the claw line ability, because now I can use my nail as a freaking grappling hook. Like, look how sick this looks. And not only can I attach to these hooks, but I can use them in combat too. Of course it's gonna take some practice, but this will come very useful in the future, especially when I use it to attach to walls and save my ass when I fail in parkour sections. And after getting through another gauntlet section, I rest up at another bench and speak to the 12th architect, who sells a bunch of tools including the architect's key, which I'll be grabbing a little later. And after purchasing the crafting kit, I head back to the slab where it's time to go back to my Celeste roots and climb all the way to the top of Mount Faye and do a little parkouring as well, as I find Shaka for the first time in a while and buy the map from her and start my climb to the top. And I can't lie, Team Cherry really got creative with this section, because for those of you that haven't played this game before, there's pretty much a freeze mechanic in this section since it's winter time, meaning that there are safe spots in these warm fire bubbles that I can warm up at before exiting and having a certain amount of time before I start freezing again and lose health, which I think is such a cool mechanic in this game and what makes this section tough, because it really makes you panic once you know that the clock has started and you only have a certain amount of time before your health bar starts ticking down and you freeze to death like I did right over here like an idiot. So I really can't afford to screw up even once or I'm cooked. But overall, I really did like this parkour section, and honestly I really enjoy all the parkour in this game because it just brings back memories of when I used to play Celeste, because I absolutely adore that game and its platforming since it's probably one of my favorite platformers of all time. But the use of the claw line in this section was really well done and did for some really cool sequences, all while making a really challenging platforming section which was just perfect, and I loved it the whole way through, even though I had to restart a bunch. And after about 30 minutes or so of brutal parkour, I swear this was deadass some shit you would find in the White Palace from the first game, I finally get to the top of the mountain where I inspect this ancient tuning mechanism and play my needle in, activating its powers and summoning a giant bird that somehow grants me the Fade Down Cloak, which is the double jump mechanic in this game and is hands down the best ability in this game by far next to the wall jump. But my only question is, was it the tuner that gave me the ability or the giant bird that absolutely decimated the thing? I guess we'll never know because I can't even talk to the damn bird. But now that I have the double jump and completed the climb, I head back to the far fields to purchase the weighted belt from one of the merchants, which now stops me from getting knocked back every time I attack, which again together with the Wanderer's Crest makes me feel like I'm playing the original game all over again. But then I enter this hut or whatever the hell this is and reach one of the harder gauntlets in this game and also one of the coolest. As the reason why I say it's one of the hardest is because it includes disappearing platforms and lava every time you land on it, meaning you're pretty much stuck to the wall the entire time, all while these beast fly bastards shoot fire at you with their aimbot ass. It's really, how were they hitting me? It makes no sense. And after attempting this for about 10 minutes or so, I managed to beat it, and then it just turns into a chase sequence that the lava just starts rising and I have to platform all the way to the top without dying, because God knows if I died it would have taken me another 30 minutes to beat that fucking gauntlet. But thank God I was able to do it on the first try and get the mass shard at the end of it. But even though this section did make me a little mad with how bullshit the mechanics were, the ending was pretty cool. And after doing a bunch of side shit, I head back to the Underworks where I speak with the architect and purchase the architect's key, where I open the door and bind with the 4th chorus it seems like, and claim the crest of the architect, which I can't lie, I hated instantly the moment I auto-equipped, because what the actual hell is this weapon? Give me back my Wanderer's Quest please and thank you. And after that I find another binding place in Wormways where I acquired the Sharp Dart skill and then head back to Eva to upgrade my crests as I gained an additional blue slot onto them. But now back to the White Ward where I find a helpless Sherma in a gauntlet room where I fend off the evil bastards away from him, almost dying of course, granting his wish and gaining another spool fragment as my reward. And after partying a little together with some depressing ass singing, I acquired the Surgeon's Key and get into this gauntlet section where I fight a bunch of these annoying ass enemies before I get into a boss fight with whatever this is. The boss overall wasn't that bad, as the only annoying thing about it was the fact that I had to fight these enemies in the middle of it, and also anytime I died I had to fight them before the fight even started. But I will say I did find the spirit dodging sections within the fight pretty cool, but other than that it wasn't too bad as I managed to beat it on my second try, with the main strategy being taking a hit every time you ran into me so that I would get the most damage off possible, since the Wanderer's Crest DPS is massive and I was able to heal back pretty quickly, which worked very well. And after defeating that beast, I collect this floating object floating in the air and return to my gray dream world where I climb to the top to collect the object again and wake up the room just like I was, as I collect a Psalm cylinder cylinder right after that and return to the Greymoor using the Bellway station back at the Grand Bellway and make it to Sinner's Road, which is one of my least favorite areas in this entire game, purely because of how creepy and dark it is and how difficult the enemies are in this section because it's freaking hard. But after finding Chakra here and buying the map from her, I get into a boss fight against the disgraced Chef Lugoli, which was a little harder than it should have been for me since it was all about dodging projectiles, but I managed to do it in 3 tries or so it wasn't that bad. And after exploring a little more, I run into the Styx character who apparently wants to be my life servant and pledges to feed me, or whatever that means. And then I get into one of the most insane sections in the entire game, and I'm not even gonna waste another second talking about a section as it's pretty much just me walking around and following these butterflies as they lead me in the right direction, as every exit that I take in this area is literally RNG unless I'm following the butterflies. And oh yeah, I have to deal with these freaks of nature as well on my way there too, so that was fun. But pretty much the butterflies end up leading me to an exhaust organ and into the next boss fight of the game known as the Phantom, which I can't lie wasn't too hard as I only ended up dying once with their moveset being pretty easy to pick up, but I can't lie, the ending sequence with me being able to kill them with the parry was actually so cold. Like Hornet just got a massive aura gain with that move. But after killing the Phantom, I learned the coolest move in the entire game known as the cross stitch, and that's literally the parry move I just used, as I can now parry enemies attacks and instantly get my get back, pretty much instantly killing them if they're a regular enemy because I got 3 shots off. But it's pretty useful in boss fights too to dodge an attack and instantly get my get back as well. It's just an all-around great skill to have in my opinion. But after taking care of that, I head back to the deep docks where I get into another pretty tough gauntlet section since these things get harder and harder as I find more of them. You see, I didn't lie at the beginning, did I? Especially when they involve bombs being thrown across the screen 24/7. Also, the craziest ending to this section is me dying after I completed the gauntlet and me freaking the fuck out thinking I had to replay it. But thankfully when I returned it was done and I could collect my shit back in peace, thank God. But straight after that I save another flea in peril and then get into a boss fight against the 4 brothers Cygnus, which is actually kind of tricky as during the fight a bunch of these smaller enemies spawn in, which just makes it really annoying, especially the flying one that just throws flame stones at me and the guy with the shield as well. But what really took me off guard is that randomly in the middle of the fight, Cygnus's brother Gran just joins the fight out of nowhere and decides to help him out, making it now a 2v1. Like, what the hell is this pussy shit right now? But regardless, shortly after Gran joins the fight, I managed to take out Cygnus pretty quickly and Gran shortly after that as well, as his moveset was a lot slower than Cygnus, which made him the trickier opponent. But the fight overall was pretty challenging with me dying once to Cygnus and then finishing off both of them on my second try, which did turn out to be pretty cool, I won't lie. And once that was dealt with, I pick up another memory locket and then grant the lost merchant wish found in the first shrine by saving our pal Jubilana from a bunch of owls that I beat to a pulp totally on the first try, and then spend literally the next hour or so just collecting spool fragments and doing a bunch of other side quests as well before heading back to Greymoor and finding yet another area in the game known as Wisp Ticket, which as you can see is a very annoying area as it's very reliant on these sentient fireballs that just spawn out of these hanging candles and are for some reason heat seeking as well, so that's fun. And oh yeah, there's parkour too, which always is a good mix, am I right? And to just add more fun to the mix, in the little next section I encounter some fire wizard guy that controls these fireballs too, as well as teleporting as well, so that's even more fun. I hate my life. Once I get past all the bullshit and actually start exploring the area, I actually somehow managed to make my way back to the underworks, because somehow this area was so low below ground, it managed to be below the underworks, and that's located at the literal bottom of the citadel. So I thought that connection was pretty cool. And after I make it past the razor squares, I save a flea and then take a boatload of cogs to the face, because what the fuck was that? Once that was dealt with, I head back to Wisp Ticket and take on the next boss fight in the game known as the Father of the Flame. And I can't lie, this was a pretty cool boss fight because there wasn't one direct target that I had to continuously beat on in order to proceed through it, as I had to take out the fire on all the arms of the Flame Father in order to then directly attack the center to deal damage to get further into the fight. But the cool thing about this fight is the fact that I can't heal whatsoever during it, since all the attacks that I deal to the Father of Flame doesn't increase my silk at all, meaning that I can't heal during the fight, so I can't take damage for free like I have been in other boss fights. And if I was going to showcase my dodging skills in a fight, this was going to be it, because not only did I have to continuously attack the flames on the arms to get rid of them, I also had to be dodging the heat-seeking fireballs coming my way as well, and it was just so satisfying to do during this fight, and I really enjoyed it. But once the center flame got involved and started spurting out several fireballs at once, it's where it got really difficult, because I couldn't just continuously bounce on the center to deal damage while he was shooting out the flames, or I would literally die for free. So it was a little tricky to deal consistent damage, but after dying twice, I managed to figure out a pattern of when to retreat and when he does start shooting from the center, and when to attack head on, which ultimately led to my victory in the end, as the fight as a whole was pretty short. I really expected a second phase or something, to be honest, but once he was taken care of, I pick up the Wisp Fire Lantern and head back to the slab where I find the Brood Mother and collect her eye before heading to the first shrine and depositing it on the board to grant the wish. And since I'm already on a streak of fighting bosses, I want to fight another one as I get straight into another fight with the Clockwork Dancers. And I know I've said this about several bosses already, but Team Cherry have absolutely outdone themselves with the boss fights in this game, because this fight was also just so cool, as these guys move depending on where they're looking, and we can see where they're gonna go before they actually move that location, which you would think would make the fight really easy. But the hard part is once you reach the final phase of the fight, they're no longer synchronized, as they're both moving wherever the hell they want, and it's up to you to track them both since they're not moving in the same direction anymore, which I just loved, especially when I do end up killing one of the dancers. It's so sad when the one just goes in the middle and floats all by himself, when originally they would both be floating up together. But I put him out of his misery pretty quick though, so he wouldn't have to feel the pain any longer, and end the fight on my third or fourth try, as this boss wasn't the toughest but still put up a challenge in the final phase. And once they were defeated, the background completely changes as the cogs turn and reveals an elevator with 3 figures standing around it. And once I inspect it, they all come to life and reveal themselves as the threefold melody, if I'm interpreting this correctly. As once they finish speaking, when I open the map, all 3 of their icons appear, as I need to learn all 3 of their melodies in order to ascend alongside them, I guess. Yeah, again, please someone explain to me in the comments what's going on, because I have no idea. But now that that's dealt with, I head back to the cold chambers where I find some of these tall soldier guys, as well as these annoying ass flying enemies that straight up just steal my silk, but at least I get to test out my new parry technique, which again is just so cool by the way. But after I parkour up here, I reach the next area in the Citadel known as the High Halls, which as you would predict, since I had to do it to actually get here in the first place, is a very parkour heavy area, which yes is fun and all, but when you also put flying enemies in the way just like in the Hunter's March, is where I draw the line, because what the actual hell is this? Once I reach further into the area, I get to the crafting bench where I make the most broken item in the entire game, and that's the cog fly, and is also where the polyp pouch comes into play as well, but I'll show you the power of that once I actually equip it. In the meantime though, I parkour some more down here around this tricky spike section and open another Ventrica, as well as acquiring the High Halls map as well, before deciding that I want to get rid of all these silk stealing bastards, as I head into this dark room where a bunch of these bastards spawn in and destroy this huge clump of silk before hearing all of their dead bodies fall to the ground, as they are now extinct for good, because God knows I did not want to deal with their shit any longer. And now that they've all been dealt with, I head back to the bench to equip the cogfly and spawn these cute little guys that follow me around. They're so adorable, but just because they're cute as hell doesn't mean they can't throw hands, because the first enemy I run into while they're in the area gets cooked instantly, as the real reason why I say they're the most useful tool in the game is because they just take care of the pest without me having to do anything or getting close at all. But the one thing is that when they attack, they do end up dying, so I have to keep replenishing them by spawning in more. But by spawning in more, I run out of stock to spawn, indicated by the circle under my health. So whenever I rest at the bench, they all get replenished by using up the shell shards that I'd collected, which realistically is the only use I've ever found for them so far in the game, as they're useless otherwise. But now that I've explained the cogflies to you guys, let's get back to what I was doing before, as after acquiring them, I head back to the first shrine where I make the cogflies poison now after equipping the polyp pouch, which makes them even deadlier, and then enter the cogwork core, where I get the map up here and then get into another gauntlet section where my flies really show off their talents, and just take out everyone by themselves, and then get a match shard as a reward, completing another set and adding another health point to my stats, giving me a total of 8 HP. And after that, I find this inert automation with an empty chest and get through a whole lot of parkour, which was pretty tough, but also had pretty creative uses for the claw line, which I really liked. And after dealing with this puzzle and getting a choir performance along with my needle in playing, I learned the Architect's Melody, which is one part of the threefold melody that I'm required to learn. And after that spectacular performance, I head back to Grand Bellway, where I get into another gauntlet section in the Coral Chambers, which leads me into the next Citadel area known as the Whispering Vaults. I don't even know how many areas that makes it now, but that's a lot. And after getting the map up here and seeing this somehow connects directly back to the first shrine, which is always cool to see with the world design, I head deeper into the Whispering Vaults, where I get jump scared by the Vault Keeper Cardenas, who asked for my Psalm cylinders, to which I say no and keep them until later, and then do some more puzzle solving to acquire a Pale Oil, which I can now use to upgrade my nail back at Belhard at the Pinmaster, which I do right away so I can deal more damage to my foes. And after that, I head back into Whispering Vaults, where I die several times in this parkour section, with one of the deaths happening before I could even retrieve my soul, which as you can probably tell, tilted the absolute shit out of me. But after conquering that parkour and doing a little more up here to free a lost flea, I grab another Psalm cylinder and dueled Garmond, which I can't lie was a piece of cake, and now renders him completely useless whenever he tries to help me in fights, because no wonder it didn't feel like he was helping me at all when it came to that one boss in Greymoor. And after beating his ass, I get another cog heart piece and get into the next boss fight of the game against Trobio. And this boss design was also really cool in my opinion, as this entire character is based off being spectacular and being a showman, since he literally appears out of show smoke and all the bombs he throws extrude that same smoke before blowing up like fireworks. It's really cool. But even though it's cool, the fight is fucking hard, especially since there's so much shit to keep track of and dodge at once, and there's always some shit going on the screen. Either it's the fireworks going off, him spin tornadoing across the screen, or all at the same time. Also, the tornadoes he throws out at each side are pretty hard to dodge too, and every attack deals 2 damage to me as well, which was pretty annoying. but since the Wanderer's Crest is so goated, I was able to deal enough damage to him and beat him before the fight could last any longer on my third or fourth try, because that final attempt felt a lot shorter than the other previous ones, which is a good thing because I did not want that lasting longer than it did, because I swear I was about to get a seizure from the screen flashing and shaking 24/7. But after I beat him, I collect the claw mirror, watch him try to get up and escape every time I left and came back into the room, which was pretty funny, and then take this elevator all the way back down here, where I then go down under the elevator to another parkour section where I find the sacred cylinder at the end, and I'm told to head back to the Vault Keeper in order to use it, which is exactly what I do right away as I give him all 6 cylinders that I have and play the sacred cylinder along with my needle in order to learn the Vault Keeper's melody, the second part in the threefold melody, with the only melody I have left to learn being the conductor's melody. But before I go for that, I head back over to the empty shell that I found back a bit ago and insert the cogwork heart into it now that I've found all the pieces necessary to reconstruct it. And the moment I do that, the second sentinel comes to life, speaks to us for a moment, and then jumps away, leaving us without a single thank you because I just saved its life and it doesn't even show appreciation. What manners these people have nowadays, huh? And after being creeped the hell out for the 80th time in this game, I head back to the coral chambers where I find my girlfriend, the sentinel over here, spinning the block on these soldier guys that are always in my way when I run through here. And after helping out in the battle with a smile, it stops and jumps away. Again with the manners, someone's gotta have a talk with that one. And after finding some of the other locations that it pops up at and helping it fight, I head back to the Blasted Steps where I do some parkour up here to find a new area in the game that God knows I wouldn't have found without some help, and that's the Sands of Carrick. And this, just like Blasted Steps, is very difficult as this area is just very parkour heavy, but instead of the platforms being set in stone, the platforms actually disappear after a certain amount of time once the course is activated, which I thought was such a cool idea when I saw it, until it then turned into dread after failing multiple times. Like, I think this may have been the only time I actually struggled to get to Chakra, because oh my god did I have to fight tooth and nail to get to a location. It was insane. But nevertheless, I purchased the map from her, which at a certain point I think should be free because I feel like I've gained her trust at this point and I should get a free discount or something. But that's okay, I know who my real ones are. I'm looking at you, Sherma. You never charged me a penny for anything, even your singing. But after getting the map, I explore around the area where I find the crust nut, adding on to the great taste of Farlem quest I accepted a while ago, and then free the lost flea I find up here after dealing with the tricky parkour section. And after that, I deal with probably the hardest parkouring section I will ever encounter in this area, with me damn near dying and having to restart, before heading into another boss fight and meeting up with an old friend of ours known as the Raging Conch Fly, as you all remember from way before when we fought him and his brother, and he ran away once I killed him. So yeah, he's back for revenge, and I'm gonna give him a chance to act on it, which he becomes victorious in like 5 seconds as I end up dying straight away after dodging him a couple times, and take a corkscrew point blank to the face at 1 HP after going through a crazy parkour section. Real fair, huh? But the best part about dying in that fight though is the fact that I have to get through that entire parkour section once again, which pissed me the hell off, but at the same time amazed me because this has to be the worst run back I've ever seen in one of these games. It's actually insane. But after getting back to the fight, this time with 90% of my HP still intact, I fight him once again with it not going his way this time, as the fight is pretty much just the exact same as the original, with a few of his buddies showing up for backup, but they couldn't save him from the ass whooping I just dished out on him, as I beat him on the second try and never having to go through that AIDS parkour or seeing another conchfly sibling again. And with that, I move on forward and enter this creepy looking cave with these creepy ass statues where I find and acquire the conch cutter as a reward. But seriously, what the fuck is happening in this cave? Get me out of here. But after that, I head back to Graymore where I purchased the vintage nectar from the bartender, which of course isn't so easy because in order to actually get it, I need to actually go into a cellar and fight for my life in this gauntlet against all these bugs before I'm able to collect it and go on my merry way. As I head back to Sinners Road, free this green prince from this cage, and deliver the final ingredient back to the Loyal Mergewin via a courier mission from these guys, in which I only have a certain amount of time to reach my destination. And if I get hit, the timer goes down, and just to let you guys know, this shit took me damn near 1 full hour to complete because I'm a complete idiot who can't walk properly without getting hit a single time. But after grinding this out and giving the merchant all the ingredients to serve his master and complete his wish, to end this mission we watch as he calls on his master as he roars in our face before devouring everything and finally giving me the pale oil he had in his jar as a reward for completing it. Definitely a complete scam by the way, because I still have to pay the pin master to upgrade my nail, even though I went through hell and back to find all these ingredients for him. But it is what it is, I guess. And I definitely overhyped the shit out of this ending by the way, because it's more sad than funny than anything else. And since I can't afford the amount that this bastard is charging me to upgrade the nail, I head back to the coral chambers to grind out some rosaries to pay for it, and then spend around 30 minutes just grinding out more rosaries so I wouldn't have to worry about these again. And I swear if I had died at any point during this moving forward and lost all my rosaries, I would get so pissed. But let's not manifest the absolute worst, or else it'll actually fucking happen knowing my luck. Instead, let's move on to the area that I hate the absolute most in this entire game, and that's the putrefied duct. At the moment I entered and saw the green theme, I knew I was gonna hate it because of how hard it was gonna be. And right I was, because as soon as I hopped down the ledge and got into a fight with literally every enemy under the sun within the first 30 seconds of being down here. I knew this was going to be a problem, but I do end up finding the next Bellway station right away though, along with the bench, so I can rest easy knowing if I die, at least I'd spawn close enough to my soul to claim it. And after I rest up, I find the map right here and explore a little where I run into the Huntress where I promise her a wish and then go through a weird series of parkour events before finding Vogue, who is part of the fleet crew, as I instantly go back to blast the steps and seek out our flea master, who has a ton of these fleas surrounding him. As if you guys remember all the way back at the beginning of the game, before I was even finding fleas, the amount that was around him, yeah, it was almost nothing. But now he's damn near got the entire gang back together. But when I speak with him, I accept to travel with him in his caravan as he takes me to Fleetopia, where I find Vogue once again sulking here as he gives me the rest of the lost flea locations on my map for a pretty non-reasonable price, but I'll take it since I grind out damn near 5k rosaries, as I'm now able to see the fleas I have left to save on the map when I open it, which as you can see isn't a lot, so I'd say I've done a pretty good job with them. But after that, I end up exploring around for a bit, doing some side quests in far fields in the slab, both of them requiring crazy parkour before getting into the next major boss fight of the game, known as the First Sinner. And I can't lie, this shit was so intimidating, because just look at what I'm dealing with here. A speedy teleporting demon who just spawned in shit from the heavens that crashes down onto me, so I was fucking sweating. But since I'm a fucking 2D platforming master, the king of Cuphead some would say, I managed to defeat the First Sinner on my second try, with my main strategy being to use my parry every time she ran across the screen with her slash attacks, as I didn't have to worry about dodging out of the way, as I could just parry and get some guaranteed damage onto her. And also her spear attacks did also get easier to dodge the more it happened in the fight, as I'm already pretty experienced with projectile dodging already, so this wasn't too bad to deal with, especially since I already knew the direction the spears were going to be with the help of the lines, and where the safe points were going to be. And once the second phase started and she started spawning in bombs around the screen, again the safe points were pretty clear to me, as well as the attacks being all around the same as the first phase. So at that point, it was just a matter of locking in and not messing up multiple times in a row, since all of her attacks dealt 2 damage, along with her being able to heal in the same way I can, since she can bind 2 for whatever reason. And after fighting a little longer, I defeated the First Sinner on my second try as I bind with her and once again return to my gray dream world, where this time it's not just climbing straight up, but actually an entire section this time, with me picking up an object at the end with some lore cutscene playing once again, and me not understanding anything that's happening, comments please help me, and me getting the Silk Skill rune page, which puts an end to the First Sinner and one of my favorite fights in this entire game, as it was a really cool design and was really challenging too, so it gets an A+ from me. And after that, I head back to Bellheart, where I gain access to my Bell home, because I'm such a hero to the Bellheartians, and then go to a bunch of the merchants and buy everything they have to offer before heading back down to the Whispering Vaults and heading all the way to the bottom and finding the final new major area in the game, known as the Bilewater. And I can't lie, I think this area just outclasses the Putrefied Ducks in form of difficulty and just annoyance, because for some reason everything just wants to explode on sight as soon as it dies. Like, why? But this is where I managed to get the Twisted Bud as well, which will be pretty important for an achievement a little later, but just know for me, this is a pretty annoying item to have as well, because every time I open my inventory, I just hear its ass crying 24/7, like, just shut up. But after that, I head a little deeper and managed to find and open the final Bellway in this game, as well as finding Chakra shortly after that and buying the map as well. And after acquiring the ruined tool from one of the secret rooms that I can now open with the needle in, I do a bunch of side quests, including one where I find Chakra with her dead master, as I play a song with her to sing as she grieves him. But after doing all of that, I get to a gauntlet section, which was honestly pretty hard because of the enemies that were chosen for the fight, but I did end up coming out of it alive. But to my surprise, it wasn't even an actual gauntlet section, it was just a gauntlet section hidden as a boss fight, as we now get into the next boss fight of the game, known as Grohl the Great. And this boss was honestly just annoying more than anything else, because literally every time I died, I would have to go through this gauntlet section over again, which already was hard in itself, and then I have to go into the fight without full HP, which again was just so annoying. But thank God the boss itself was basic and not too intricate, because I would have lost my mind if I had to stay in this fight longer than I had to, because I managed to beat him on my second try and that was it. But now that I've beaten that potential threat to my mental health, I head back to Greymoor, where I duel Chakra in a pretty challenging fight, I'm not gonna lie. I ended up beating her in about 3 minutes or so it wasn't that bad, considering that it was looking like a fight that was gonna take me 30, but thank God it didn't. But now that I've completed everything to do with Chakra in this game, it is now time to head into the final threefold melody challenge, as I request aid from Chakra in the battle to head into the gauntlet, where she will help me fight against these bastards. And I can't lie, while going through it with the help of Chakra, I could already tell that this gauntlet was not made for one-player combat, because just look at what I would have had to deal with on my own. Like, I would have ended up like that Farfield's gauntlet that got scammed out of by Chakra for not helping me. But at least this time I had her assistance to help take out these guys. But I can't even lie, even with the help of Chakra, I damn near almost died several times throughout the fight. So I don't know if that means this gauntlet is just insanely difficult even with help, or I'm just insanely shit at the game. I think I'll take it being difficult over the latter. About that gauntlet's taken care of, I play a song alongside alongside the conductor Ballador and learn the final melody within the threefold melody. And before I head back to the figures of the threefold melody, I accept the final audience promise, which leads me back to the second Sentinel as I get into a boss fight with them, which honestly wasn't that bad as I managed to beat it in 3 tries, as her patterns are pretty easy to pick up on, with the hardest thing was her attacks being pretty quick. But other than that, it wasn't that bad. But I think the best thing though is that after not having any matters at all in our previous encounters, they actually consider us friends in the end, which was very nice to hear. I take back everything I said to you earlier, buddy. Please disregard when I called you a bastard 20 times before. But on top of regarding us as friends, they also give me the reserve bind, which is very useful as I can use it to heal in times when I don't have enough silk in my reserve, which does help me in very sticky situations coming up. But after granting her that wish, it is now time to confront the threefold, as I tell them that I've learned the melody and proceed to play a song for them as they all sing in unison in a pretty great little scene. I really love this, honestly. And once that ended, they all go away and the elevator opens as I enter, and it brings me up through a cutscene where I come face to face with Lace once again and get straight into another fight with her, which again, just like her other fights, wasn't that bad. Honestly, maybe even easier this time since I have the Wanderer's Crest this time, so I'm able to deal a lot more damage, so I was able to beat her on the second try. And once I beat her, I collect this floating object and get transported back to my Grey Dream World, where some lore stuff happens that I don't understand at all, before entering the cradle, collecting the map, and heading back to the Grey Root before entering the final boss of the game to give her the twisted bud we got a while back and grant her wish, the Rite of Rebirth, and get cursed by her in the most brutal way possible, because what the fuck? In which I can no longer heal myself and have to get through the rest of the game with this curse permanently on me, which I only do for an achievement, of course, not because I want to torture myself. But now that I have the curse on me, I head back to the cradle and climb up all the way to the final boss location and challenge a massive silk ball out in the distance as it gets destroyed, and the final boss emerges, being the Grandmother Silk. As on my first try, I do manage to get a stun off her, but then immediately get killed straight away after not dodging one of the strings that she catches me with that deals 3 damage, which is crazy. But now that I've gotten over the first try, it is now time for the grind. As since I can't heal at all during the fight, I gotta learn this fight pretty well if I want to get through it with minimal damage. But I pushed through it and actually got to the second phase on my second try, which was just a completely different boss fight than the first phase, as rocks just start falling down from the sky, and once she gets me stuck in a corner, she just starts spamming her pins on me like crazy. It was so difficult, as well as spikes also coming up from the ground, which was absolute bullshit, by the way, with half the time it taking up 80% of the platform where I can't even hit her, which is so stupid. But the more I played through the fight, the more I started to learn how the fight played out, and I actually started improving pretty quickly the more experience I got with it, to the point where I could damn near get through the first phase without taking a single hit, which would be so satisfying when it would happen, and then kill all my hope instantly when I would die in like 2 seconds once the second phase starts. And as I played through it more and more, I did end up utilizing my claw line to deal damage to her and also avoid the spikes on the ground, so I could at least keep dealing continuous damage even though I couldn't reach her from the ground, and also avoid her sword attacks as well. And after 1 whole hour of fighting the Grandmother Silk, I managed to finally finish her off with my last strike as I watch as I bind her, or whatever the hell is going on here, and end the game with this cutscene and let the credits roll. But of course, this isn't the end of the game, because I'm still nowhere near 100% completion, as I go back into my save file and now have to defeat the boss, this time without the curse, and to do that I actually have to get rid of it first, which brings me back to the locked bell home. Since I'm in dire need of help, I call out to it and they let me in this time, as I meet Yarnaby, as he's only willing to help me out once I upgrade his extricator that can remove the curse, and the only way to do that is by purchasing the steel spines over here in Sinner's Road before heading back and watching an insane cutscene as the curse is literally stabbed right out of me, and I acquire the Crest of the Witch, which I of course will not be using, but at least the curse is released now. So thanks for that, little buddy. But before I head back to the Grandmother Silk and fight her again, I must complete the Silk and Soul quest tasked by the caretaker in order to get a different ending to the fight when I do fight her this time. And after I speak to both the Hermit and the Maiden and they both give me their souls, I head back to Eva as she gives me my final crest upgrade and allows me to bind with her and gives me her art known as Silksong, which is so OP, as now every time I rest at a bench, my silk meter increases over time to max capacity, which is just so useful whenever I die or I'm low on silk. I can just rest up and recover it all as if nothing happened. I just love it. But now that Eva's gone, I can now go back to the caretaker and give up all the souls to him as I fulfill his wish and head back to the Grandmother Silk, with this time the fight being much easier than before since I can now heal, even though I did end up dying like an idiot once. But once the ending of the fight happens, a cutscene happens where I'm given the decision whether I want to bind with her or play my needle in. And I of course choose to bind with her since that's what we've been doing this entire time, as I just spam the bind button and literally bind her into non-existence as we watch the Citadel get completely overtaken by the silk, with Hornet being at the center of it, all as the cutscene comes to an end, and the second ending being completed. The third ending happens once I play the needle in during that scene in the fight instead, as this time the darkness starts to capture her while she tries to kill us. But out of nowhere, Lace just decides to save my ass and take out the Grandmother Silk herself, as the Citadel gets completely completely laced in darkness, no pun intended, which opens up the third act of the game called Abyss. And pretty much this is where the real challenge begins, because as soon as Act 3 starts, all the enemies in this game becomes 2 times stronger as they all get engulfed with darkness and just starts doing crazy ass attacks when fighting. Like, just look at that. But at this point, there's a lot of stuff that I have to do to get the true ending of this game, along with getting 100%. With the main things that I have to do is get the Silksong ability, which is literally an enhanced grapple hook, which just looks so cool, and collecting the last crest abilities and defeating every other boss that's still left to beat, along with granting every other lingering wish. So this was going to be a grind. And after hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of playing this game and using a guide for some of it, because literally some of the shit that was in this game that I needed to find 100% it literally would be impossible for me to find, and also finish this game in a timely manner, especially finding the locations of this little mushroom guy that I had to find at several locations in order to get the secret ending once I beat the final boss, which included getting through the single hardest parkour section in this entire game to get to one of his locations he was residing at, which by the way had no checkpoints or anything, so if I died, I was restarting that entire parkour from the beginning, so it was stressful. But after finding all his locations and completing his passing of age wish, along with everything else in the game, I head back to the Snail Shamans as I go to sleep for the final time in this game and enter the Red Memory, which pretty much just gives us some backstory on Horner herself, which is pretty cool. But I think the coolest thing this gave us, which honestly made me a little reminiscent, was when the memory started to show elements of the original Hollow Knight, like the original areas like the Hive, and showed the original designs like the stack station and the elevators. But most of all, when the White Palace showed up and I had to do parkour through it, is when this became my favorite moment in the entire game, because it literally made me relive my trauma from the last game, because I absolutely hated the Path of Pain bullshit. But in all honesty, this was amazing from Team Cherry to add this in for the players, as that original game came out 8 years ago, and it was nice to relive those memories playing the original within the memory in the game we're playing right now, so that was a nice touch. But once I reached the end of the memory and speak to the white lady from the original game, I obtained the Everbloom, as it's now time to take on the last objective and beat the game and complete the last dive. As I head down into the Abyss, which is an area that was unlocked through the entire time skip that I did, I speak to the spirit of Lace about wanting to save her before taking a leap of faith into the darkness, with the Everbloom granting me protection from it the entire way down, in such a beautiful final cutscene, before I get into the final fight of the game known as the Lost Lace. Now, for those of you that are currently playing this game and are stuck in this fight, my only word of advice to you to get through this fight is really just to keep your eyes locked in on Lace the entire time, because the more you look at her and her movements, the more you understand her telegraphs for her attacks. Because if I'm being honest, when I first started this boss fight, I was not looking at her most of the time. I was really focused on my own movements and trying to dodge out of the way the most I could. But in reality, looking at her is the best guide, especially in the second and third phase of the fight when there's so much other shit distracting you on screen. Looking at her is always the best option, since she's the thing on screen that's the hardest to dodge, while everything else is either just a still object on screen like the ground attacks, or the homing orbs that are the only attacks that happen when she's kept at a standstill so you can properly dodge them. But other than that, she's the main target, and if you look at her the entire fight and understand her telegraphs for certain moves, it definitely makes the fight so much easier. As yes, the fight was very difficult and did take me a little bit to get used to, but it definitely would have taken me a lot longer to beat if I had just kept focusing on two things at once, myself and her, when all my attention should realistically be on what she's doing rather than me. And once I implemented that plan, I started to get better and better until 30 minutes later, I managed to land my final strike on her, initiating the ending sequence as I pick up the now uncursed Lace and let out the biggest super jump ever to escape with the help of her mother to break out of the darkness and come face to face with the original Hollow Knight from the first game, which just brought back so many memories for me when I originally saw this, as he then saves her from the darkness as she wakes up beside Lace, both being completely safe, as the game comes to a close with the mushroom guy just launching into the air for some reason like a space rocket, and the game being to be continued. As the real credits start to play and Hollow Knight Silksong comes to an end, the game completion coming up on screen as it shows that I have finally, after nearly 40 hours of playing, have 100% completed Hollow Knight Silksong. And my god, was that a journey. I don't think ever since I played Elden Ring have I spent this long on a game and enjoyed every moment of it. Like, I absolutely adored this game from beginning to end, and just finding every little thing this game had to offer was just a treat. And if I'm being honest, I really don't have a bad thing to say about the game, as the combat was amazing, all the boss fights were out of this world, except for the Savage Beast fight of course. But other than that, I really love this game and can now consider Hollow Knight Silksong 100% complete. And now that I've completed this game and Team Cherry have already confirmed DLC as well, it's time I take a rest from this game and get ready for whatever the hell this had to put into that, because I'm sure it'll be amazing and I look forward to playing it. But now we've reached the end of the video. Hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you've stuck around this long, I really appreciate you, because a lot of work was put into this video, so I really hope you enjoyed it. But if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, as once again I put so much work into these these videos and would love to produce more bangers like this one right here. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you all in my next journey. Peace!